Science fiction is an ironically magical genre to be a fan of. When it's made well, it can take you to worlds that are at once fantastical and wholly believable. It can be used as a jumping-off point for high adventure or as a lens for examining current political and philosophical quandaries. From Ghost in the Shell to Gundam to Gantz, sci-fi anime tends to be a treasure trove of big, interesting ideas. But there are plenty of great ideas outside the most popular sci-fi shows that a lot of people aren't even aware of, and it can be a big ask to sort through all the crap out there to get to the really good stuff. Fortunately, as has been established in previous videos, I've watched a frankly irresponsible amount of anime in my time, and I love making recommendations. If you're looking for something different to watch in the next little while, here are 5 great sci-fi shows to sink your teeth into. My first suggestion might not seem very science fiction-y at first. Tokyo Magnitude 8.0 is an example of one of my favorite kinds of science fiction, contemporary sci-fi. Instead of being set in the far future, it's set just a few years from the present, with tech having advanced just enough to allow for interesting possibilities without doing anything too out there. Kinda like Space Brothers, except a lot more tragic. Space Brothers is a hopeful story, all about exploring the question of what will happen in the first stages of colonizing the moon and eventually Mars. Tokyo Magnitude 8.0 explores the darker question of what will happen when Tokyo is the epicenter of a major earthquake. Yes, when, because there's a 70% likelihood of a 7.0 or higher quake hitting the city inside 30 years. And the answer to that question is kind of surprisingly hopeful in a lot of ways. The show presents a very realistic and measured portrayal of the capabilities of Japan's self-defense force and Coast Guard, as well as Tokyo's fire department and emergency medical response teams. And it also depicts people behaving as they actually would in a large-scale disaster, following the instructions of the nearest authority, keeping their heads down, and trying to pretend everything is normal, which, as I said while discussing I Am a Hero, is much more realistic than the rioting and panic you see in American disaster movies. Aside from exploring governmental response capabilities, the show is very interested in exploring the role that robots will play in this kind of rescue effort in the future. The little Tachikoma-esque droids that help to rescue survivors are a bit beyond modern capabilities, and the show sort of shot itself in the foot by setting the story as close to its 2009 release as 2012, but the way that they're used very closely matches what we see rescue crews today doing with UAVs and other unmanned tools. Of course, since the protagonists who we follow through this disaster are 2 precocious little kids, the show's not without its emotional gut punches, but whether or not that's your thing, the subject matter is fascinating, and it's explored with remarkable depth. But maybe you want a less grounded story from your sci-fi anime, and if that's the case, Kaiba certainly has you covered. The premise of Kaiba will be familiar to anyone who knows their cyberpunk. It's set in a world where minds have been digitized and memories have become commercial product. In this world, the death of your body is a bump in the road, and a more exciting life can be bought, Total Recall style. But only the rich can afford these luxuries, while the poor struggle to get by, scrounging for scraps and selling their bodies, sometimes literally, just to make it through the day. Like I said, when I just spell it out, it sounds like something you've seen before. The idea that our identity will eventually become disentangled from our body is one of the core ideas of Gits, and the whole class struggle thing has been a key part of sci-fi since Metropolis. But if you're looking at the screen right now, you know that Kaiba is like nothing you've ever seen before. That's because it's the original creation of Masaki Yuasa, the director behind the Tatami Galaxy, Ping Pong, Kick Heart, and that bit in Samurai Champloo where Mugen trips balls. Yuasa's work spans an impressively large range of visual styles, but his actual animation has a distinctively impressionistic quality to it. He's fond of simple, exaggerated shapes, and he'll always choose interesting, lively action over keeping characters on model or depicting things realistically. The art direction is all over the place. Some parts look very much like modern anime, while others wouldn't be out of place in a turn-of-the-century Mickey Mouse cartoon. But it all somehow blends together into a cohesive whole. Whether the show is depicting insane action or weird sex stuff or a fusion of the two, it all just works, and it animates beautifully. The simple characters and lack of shading allow the show to have more big, impressive, ridiculously smooth pieces of animation in the pilot than you see in most full series. I expect this kind of out-there animation from a student project or an art house festival film, definitely not a commercially produced 12-episode original TV series. This show feels alive. The writing and direction are equally offbeat and on point as well. The dialogue has a distinctly surreal tinge to it, but it's still very easy to follow the story story and understand what's going on. It makes the relatively basic ideas feel fresh and new. Now let's look at something older. If you're a younger anime fan, you might not know this, but before shonen battle anime and garbage light novel harems were at the top of the heap, the biggest thing in the anime scene was the space opera. In the wake of Star Wars, otaku couldn't get enough of galaxy-spanning epics. It seemed like everyone was making them. This cultural obsession was responsible for classics like Space Battleship Yamato, Legend of the Galactic Heroes, and Captain Harlock, and of course classic mecha anime like Macross, Patlabor, and the monolithic Gundam franchise. There was something truly awe-inspiring about these shows that kept Japanese audiences coming back for the better part of a decade, but it could be said that they take themselves a little too seriously. Every once in a while, every big genre needs a bit of a dressing down, and long before Shinichiro Watanabe gave us Bebop and Space Dandy, there was the irresponsible Captain Tylor. Justy Ueki Tylor is a good-for-nothing space bum who decides to join Earth's space army on a whim because a hot lady in a recruitment ad told him to. He lands himself a cushy desk job, but after accidentally saving the life of a retired admiral while trying to deliver his pension check, he's made the captain of his own destroyer-class ship, the Soyokaze. As it turns out, this is the best decision that the United Planets Space Force could have made. Despite being underpowered and manned by a crew full of troublemakers, the Soyokaze sees several decisive victories under Tylor's leadership, and helps to turn the tide of the war against humanity's enemies, the Holy Ralgon Empire. The actual setting and plot here is pretty by the numbers. You've got a loose federation of Earth-aligned planets facing off against a decidedly undemocratic alien force. But there are good and bad people on both sides, and pretty soon allegiances get pretty messy. You know the drill. But that's kind of the point. The whole concept of the show is to take a very rote, predictable space opera and shake things up by injecting the main character of a goofy comedy into it. That doesn't just apply to Tylor's personality, it's actually like he plays by different narrative rules than everybody else. While everyone else is subject to the rules of sci-fi melodrama, Tylor bumbles his way in and out of danger through sheer force of dumb luck. Everything's set up to be this great cosmic tragedy, but by the logic of a comedy, it all has to turn out okay in the end. And it does. This fascinating meta-narrative conceit gives Tylor some intellectual backbone, but the main reason I'd recommend watching it is the humor. This show is gut-bustingly hilarious and impressively well animated to boot. Compared to most shows made in the early 90s, it holds up remarkably well. If you feel like a more contemporary comedy though, Level E has you covered, though you might not know what you're in for when you first start watching it. Created by Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter author Yoshiro Togashi, Level E kicks things off by playing a bit of a long con. Talking about this show like at all will inevitably involve some early spoilers, so if you want to take my word for it that it's good and watch it, I'll leave an annotation on screen to let you skip to the next show. Spoilers start now. For the first 2 episodes, Level E seems like it's going to be an entirely different show from what it turns out to be. A high school student living on his own for the first time has his life upended when an alien visitor breaks into his house and starts crashing on his couch. With this unpleasant visitor comes the revelation that aliens walk among us, Men in Black style. Earth is practically overrun. The alien has apparently lost his memory, and he's being pursued by the government and forces from another world, so his new companion begrudgingly decides to help protect him. This sets up a dark, intriguing story with a bit of a comedic edge to it, sort of like a grown-up E.T., except that it's a lie. The alien didn't lose his memory at all, and the aliens chasing him are only after him because he's their runaway prince. Baka. Yes, that's really his name. The whole first arc of the story, and all the suspense and intrigue, is just Prince Baka fucking with some kid for laughs. And that's the show. This off-puttingly handsome alien with way too much power and time on his hands hangs out on Earth and fucks with people. And he fucks with other secret alien denizens of the planet too. Because he can. There's not much of a big idea behind this show unless you're really craving more of that Men in Black aliens live among us as regular dudes setting, but it's funny as hell, and its ED is one of the few things that can get me laughing any time of day, basically no matter what. Maybe I should cover it in a video at some point. What I definitely need to cover in a full video is my final recommendation, Dennou Coil. The directorial debut of esteemed Gainax and Ghibli key animator Isao Mitsuo, Dennou Coil explores a heavily networked world where cell phones have been supplanted by powerful augmented reality visors. Think Excel world, but not garbage. These wearable computers aren't just souped up Google Glass knockoffs either. They grant wearers access to a fully connected virtual world overlaid onto our reality. And beyond the public virtual space are pockets of hidden, corrupted space created by glitched, outdated code where viruses and other dangerous elements run rampant. The protagonist is a young girl named Yuko Okonagi, who joins up with a virtual detective agency run by her grandmother that investigates these digital anomalies. Over 26 episodes, episodes, the lines between cyberspace and reality start to blur as Yuko and her friends interact with this corrupted code, some of it seemingly sentient, and butt heads with a brash young hacker who has her own agenda. Dennou Coil presents a world that I want to live in. The AR network that these kids explore looks really, really cool and useful. I want it in my city, like, now. And the imperfections of the system, which make it feel that much more plausible, create a huge possibility space in which adventures can happen. If Digimon ever became real, and I really want Digimon to become real, this feels like how it'll happen. But the way that this world is presented is what's really impressive. There's an intense focus on little details, like the virtual pet that Yuko and her sister are always playing with, that helps to normalize what is, at its core, a pretty out there concept, and give it a very human, emotional aspect. And in terms of its tone, Dennou Coil feels almost like a Ghibli production itself. I mean, the character designs definitely help with that impression, but the way that it's directed creates a powerful sense of mystery and wonder. Stepping into the show's virtual world feels a lot like stepping into the bathhouse from Spirited Away. Mitsuo definitely learned a lot in his time working under Miyazaki. Unfortunately, he hasn't been given any more chances to apply what he learned there. Dennou Coil was a bit of a commercial flop and has never been licensed for distribution in North America, and that must have been disheartening because Mitsuo hasn't made anything else since, and I really want to see what else he's capable of. Fortunately, we might be able to help make that happen. Made in Japan is finally bringing this series to North America on Blu-ray next month on June 28th, and it's a long shot, but if it sells crazy well, maybe that'll inspire Mitsuo to get back into directing. Even if that's a pipe dream though, you should totally watch the series for you. And if you want to do something else for yourself, maybe check out my recap of the Winter 2015 season. I've got some good recommendations in there for you to check out. And if you enjoyed that and this, consider subscribing to the channel and follow me on Twitter at G0FF2 to stay up to date on everything I'm doing. Or if you're looking for analysis of an OP like I typically do, maybe check out Flip Anime's analysis of my OP. He's the guy who edited this video together, and he does some pretty dang funny parodies over on his channel. Having this video done up by an editor is made possible by the support of viewers like you through Patreon. Without generous people like the ones you're seeing on screen right now, this video might never have gotten made in the first place, and you might never have watched Dennou Coil. You are gonna watch Dennou Coil, right? Anyway, this is Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.